Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I thought I'd feature something kind of different. This is my 1954-55 Steyr Daimler Puch Moped. And while the bike itself may not be all that interesting, the story of how I got it sort of is. It goes like this. I have a friend whose name's Larry, and Larry has a neighbor named Roger. And Larry called me one day and said, my neighbor Roger has a scooter he wants to get rid of. And I thought, oh, scooter, maybe a Vespa or Lambretta. And Larry said, why don't you come on over, I'll introduce you and you can go take a look at what he's got. So I went over to Larry's house and he introduced me to Roger, and Roger said, yeah, I've got this scooter. It was my son's. He was working on it. He said, it's down the side of my house behind the motorhome back there. Go take a look. And so I walked back down the side of his house. He stayed up front talking to Larry. And when I got to behind the motorhome, all I saw was a blue tarp laying flat on the ground. And I thought, wow, where's the bike, you know? So I walked back up front and I said, Roger, I said, I'm sorry, but I don't see a bike back there. All I see is a blue tarp. And he said, oh, it's under the blue tarp. And I thought, oh my God. So I went back and lifted up the blue tarp, and what I saw would just bring tears to your eyes. This bike had been completely torn apart. Every piece laying there on the cement, you know, dirty, rusty. The motor actually looked like it had been on the bottom of the ocean. It had so much corrosion. What looked like little barnacles, which, you know, it was all like filiform aluminum corrosion that happens here in our marine environment. It obviously had been sitting there for many, many years, 10 years or more. And I looked it over. I found a few parts that looked pretty good, like this speedometer and this original bell and the tail light in the back. And, you know, I thought, well, I wonder where he's keeping the rims. They weren't there. So I walked up front and I said, Roger, do you have the rims for it? He said, yeah, they're in the garage and they're really nice shape. And I thought, of all the things you want to keep in nice shape, you know, you keep the rims and let the rest of it rot. And he brought the rims out, and they did indeed look really good. And I said, look, I'll take the rims, I'll take some other bits and pieces that I've seen that are probably worth something, and I'll sell them on eBay and split the money with you. And he said, no, he said, I want it gone. He said, you take the whole bike today or the whole thing goes in the trash. So, you know, reluctantly I said, sure, I'll take it. You know, so we loaded everything into the back of my truck, just a pile of stuff in there. Brought it here to my shop and started to look at what I had. I thought, well, let's mock up the frame and see what this thing looks like. So I put the fork on it. I put the wheels, the rims back on it. It had no seat. And I was sitting there looking at it thinking, well, this thing does have possibilities, even though the front fork was a little bit bent back. All right, you know, I thought, let's do it. Let's see what we can do for this thing. So I sent the fork, or rather the frame and the tank, to my powder coat shop, only to have them media blasted. I didn't want to have it powder coated because the electrical system, I found out, is mounted inside that pressed steel frame, and getting that back in would be a total nightmare. And so I just had them media blasted. I brought it back here and primed it all right away. They did the front fender as well. Front fender was nice. And I went ahead and painted these parts this sort of wine-colored red. Let's see, the cowling for the headlight, that's all aluminum, and that was there. That was in nice shape. Headlight was not in it. And that is not the tank that was on it. The tank that was on it is right here, and you can see why I can't use it. The toolbox is completely rotten. It must have had water in it, and the metal around those holes is very thin. I don't think you could even gas weld it, which it's a real shame because this tank is in nice shape. It's not got a dent in it. All it has is a really bad inside and that corrosion in the toolbox. So I located this toolbox, which is nice. Went ahead and primed and painted it myself. I put those Sears Allstate decals on it because I thought maybe it would have been sold by Sears back then. Not sure. It's an early version of this bike. It has a hardtail. It does not have any rear shocks. The later ones did, starting in about 56 or 58. So it's one of their early offerings. Puch Sort of came into their own in the 70s. A lot of college kids had them. Right, cheap transportation, gets about 180, 190 miles to the gallon. 2-stroke. It's an interesting bike mechanically. It has a 2-speed teleflex transmission, and that's shifted here with this grip, and that's an actual clutch. And you can see it's a 2-speed there. It says 1 and 2, and 0 is neutral. And that all seemed to be in good shape. I knew I had to get the motor apart. Took the head off, and sure enough, the piston was really rusty, and the cylinder was really rusty and looked real bad. I knew I couldn't save them, so I knew I'd have to shatter the piston. I couldn't get it out by hitting it with a block of wood or soaking it in Croil. None of that would do any good for this motor. So I took a tool that was given to me when I worked in the drilling industry. It's basically a very heavy iron chisel with an arrow-shaped point at the end and a little flat shoe at the tip of that point. And what you do is you put that chisel into any hole and hit it, and it will split the metal apart. So I drilled several holes in the top of the piston, put that devil's nightmare tool in there and whacked it a few times, and the piston just shattered. And then I was able to get the cylinder block off and get the wrist pin out of it. And that started my search. I started a worldwide search for parts for this thing. And for instance, like the tires, they're a very odd size. I found one in Belgium, and I found the other one in Israel, brand new. Tubes were fine. I could find tubes. I couldn't find the tires anywhere. But in my search for parts, I came across a website called puchshop.de in the Netherlands. And I wrote to them, told them I had an MS-50. And the gentleman there said, yeah, we've got parts for that. And what do you need? And I said, well, cylinder, piston, rings, wrist pin, needle bearings for the top of the rod. He said, yeah, I've got all that. He said, we can bump it up to 60 if you want. And I said, no, let's just keep it at 50 cc. So I ordered those parts, and while they were coming, I cleaned the motor up as best I could, about to where you see it today. That cowling over the cylinder, the original one was totally rotten, and I ended up getting that one from Puch Shop. Let's see. Also, that fan cover on the side is new. The one that was on it was all bent up and twisted and wouldn't work, wouldn't even fit. But it's a very interesting bike. It has that 2-speed teleflex transmission. The front brake is actually a drum brake on this bike, operated by the right lever. And the rear brake, surprisingly, I didn't know this. I wasn't sure what kind of rear brake it had. It's a coaster brake, just like a bicycle. You start to apply back pressure on the pedals, and it actuates the brake in the back. As it goes, yeah, it's a moped, but it's not a bicycle. You cannot pedal this and go down the road with this thing, because every time you turn those pedal cranks, you're turning the motor over, and that's not really what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to start it while it's sitting here on the stand, and it's very stable that way. You step on the pedal and it'll throw the piston around a dozen times real fast. And of course, when I got everything back together, I checked to see if it would have any spark. I hadn't even opened up the magneto, and of course there was no spark. So I took that fan cover off, took the flywheel off, and what I saw was awful. The lighting coil, the ignition coil, they were all just coming apart and full of corrosion, and points were all rotten. And so I took all that stuff out, and I toyed with the idea of maybe making my own magneto. And so I took a ignition coil that I had left over for a Honda Z50, and it fit perfectly in there. And so I put in a new set of points and a condenser and kicked it over, and I had a nice blue spark. Works fine, nothing rubs. And it does not have the lighting coil though, so the lights don't come on. But it does run great, and with that 2-speed transmission, it'll do about 35. It's loud, even though I have this new muffler on it, with a pancake muffler under the motor. It has 2 little twin exhaust pipes coming out the back, and it does run great. For me, it was just a challenge to get it back like this and see if I could make something of it. Eventually, I I did put it back in the truck, and I took it over to Roger's house and said, well, here's the moped. He said, that's not the same bike. And I said, yeah, it is. I've just worked on it for about a year here, and this is what I came out with. And he was really amazed. And actually, I was kind of amazed myself, simply because I didn't know that I had the skill or the tools to really make something out of what was just a pile of junk. But it's a cute little bike. I'll probably never ride it around. It's just kind of a keepsake to remind me of, when I get to a point on something and feel like I can't go on, I look at this and I think, okay, I think I can keep going. It's not the most difficult or challenging bike I've worked on. I'll feature that in my next video. That's a true barn find that was as rotten or worse than this bike, and I actually made something nice out of that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little video about this cute little moped. They're a lot of fun. This one I got for free, and I think you kind of need to get them for free if you want to work on them and make something out of them, because if you put money into these things to buy them initially, you may not get that back. But yeah, this bike came out great. New seat, got the luggage rack from puchshop.de, the tank from eBay, tool cover from Puch Shop, the motor covers from them as well, tires from different parts of the world. But anyway, I think it came out good, and I wanted to share that with you. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.